deal with the other in an equal perspective, since the other represents you, and when you come face to face with him, so he remains to be his unique self. Imam Hussein had this to say in that particular regard. He said, "Oh my God, you know that we have done, you know that what we have done wasn't a contest to assume power, nor wasn't aimed at seeking to possess the remnants of worldly trivia. We wanted indeed to restore the lost aspects of your faith and revive your just laws that were being ignored, so that the oppressed may feel secure." Imam Hussein, when he felt the ignorance of the other by rejecting every possible solution, chose to die consciously and refused to bow to the yoke of tyranny and injustice. By offering his lifeblood, he breathed immortal life into humanity, since he was man personified. According to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, life is a gift from Allah, the right of which has been granted for all human beings. Therefore, the use of any means of making life miserable or destroying life is obviously condemned by Islam and Imam Hussein. In other words, it is wrong to meekly submit to oppression and injustice. And whoever does not rise against tyranny, injustice and ignorance has not only wronged himself, but is a partner in oppression as well. For Imam Hussein, the main objective of life is to strive for human perfection through a conscious endeavor. He pursued this path while cognizant of his duty before his Lord and then his fellow human being. When pressured to acknowledge the unethical and inhumane rule of Yazid, he had this to say to the world: "I consider death nothing but prosperity, and submitting to oppressors nothing but sorrow." In fact, the task of Imam Hussein, in line with the mission of all the prophets, was delivering human beings from ignorance into the revival of their lost personality and identity. Through this, or through his uprising, Imam Hussein reminded mankind of the goal of creation. He showed that God did not create mankind in vain. He demonstrated in practice that there is a purpose of life, and human beings who are always under trial should strive for success in the sight of the Almighty Creator. Once the Imam was placed against the enemy, he never distanced even a little bit from the moral principles and the values that make life meaningful and make man a true representative of God on earth. For instance, when in Karbala, when he saw that the detachment of forces sent by the enemy against him was thirsty, he immediately asked his companions to provide them with water, with full knowledge of the fact that they would in the next few days dislodge his camp from the riverside and deprive him and his followers of that very water. But to Imam Hussein, it was a question of principles. It is stated that when a soul is great, the body has no choice other than to follow the soul. But small souls chase the wanton pursuits of their wayward bodies, and since this makes them drift away from logic and intellect, they succumb to any mischief and commit any crime. It is in this way that the epic of Karbala will never come to an end. With the martyrdom of 72 individuals, it is and shall remain everlasting. Karbala has continued to act like a catalyst in every age, era, and geographical place. Today, it is commemorated even in the remotest corners of the globe. The memory of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions is not only alive but also invigorating, to the extent that a Hindu named Prostam Das Tandon has this to say about the message of Imam Hussein. He said, I am aware of the significance of commemorating this great tragedy, the self-sacrifices and the high objectives of Imam Hussein revived humanity and upgraded the level of thinking of humanity. By commemorating this tragedy, we safeguard the spirit of freedom and human integrity. Gandhi, who launched his famous non-violence movement to free India from British colonial rule, said that he learned to struggle in peaceful ways against oppression from none other than Imam Hussein salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. In fact, it was Karbala, he said, that inspired him to strive for the liberation of his country. No wonder the Prophet said about Hussein salamullah alayh, the death of Hussein generates a kind of warmth that can never be extinguished in the hearts of believers and the seekers of truth. In conclusion, allow me to say this: when each and every one of us see one another in this perspective, and we all hold firm to this concept, the concept of accepting one another through our diversity, internal peace and tranquility shall overwhelm us, and repugnant selfishness and the elimination of the other shall disappear from within our existence. It's ignorance about the other that stems from our selfishness, to be from our selfish nature, to be exclusive rather than being inclusive, is the fountainhead of every evil, arrogance, conceit and ugly wars on earth. The more a human being stays aloof from ignorance and selfishness, the more he will rise himself high in regard to his true moral character and human conduct. We should not be afraid of dialogue, so that we would not become suffocated within ourselves. We must not imprison ourselves within the sectarian, nationalistic and ideological divides and lose the key in the process. Otherwise, we would have substituted intellect with backwardness and acceptance with fanaticism. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this day bless you, bless Australia, bless our brothers and sisters, and let us all, as I often say this, advance Australia fair. With this I conclude. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.
السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، السلام عليك يا باعث الهدى، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا أبا عبد الله الحسين، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك وعلى جدك وأبيك، السلام عليك وعلى أمك وأختك وأخيك، السلام عليك وعلى الأئمة المعصومين من ذريتك وبنيك ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا مغيث الشيعة والزوار في يوم الجزاء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس، السلام عليك يا أنيس النفوس، السلام عليك أيها المدفون بالردوس، يا أبرسا سلطان الأرب والعجم علي موسى رضا راضي بالقدر والقضاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كامل الكفر والطغيان، السلام عليك يا دافع الظلم والعدوان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك، وجعلنا الله من أعوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته.